Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Mark Roberti, and this is the podcast for entrepreneurs who are looking for the breakthrough for their businesses. Leadership is a very important quality for the growth and sustainability for any business. So when I hear about a book that has gathered 850 years of wisdom from successful business leaders, I have to pay attention. So we're going to be talking about this book, Supreme Leadership, during this episode and how you too can become a supreme leader. Today's guest left the corporate world in 2010 to pursue the next chapter of her journey. That chapter led to several successful books that have gone on to sell over 80,000 copies. And she has won several awards for her writing. Her latest book, as mentioned before, Supreme Leadership, contains 850 years of wisdom from successful business leaders based on them being in business for over 25 years. Today's guest for episode 139 of the Breakthrough Success Podcast is none other than Alinka Rutkowska. Alinka, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you and provide value to your audience.
Alinka, it is really great to have you on the show. I've had you on two of my virtual summits. You really knocked those out of the park, and I'm sure you're going to knock this one out of the park as well. But before we go really deep into your book, Supreme Leadership, and how we can become supreme leaders ourselves, can you give us some backstory as to why you decided to write the book?
Well, the way I approach writing books is like entrepreneurs approach creating a business. So first of all, I make sure that I create a book that there's already demand for. So you want to look at the market and make sure that there are already people reading books on the topic that you have in mind. And in fact, leadership is a popular topic. There are many well-known books by well-known authors on leadership. So I already knew that I would be creating a book that there's demand for, and that's really important. And once you have that, you want to stand out within that niche. So how are you different from everybody else? So the way I approached this topic is I interviewed 34 CEOs who've been in business for 25 years. And out of those interviews, I created the book. So I understood what type of qualities they have that allowed them to be in business for 25 years. And I haven't encountered a book on leadership that's been done this way. And this is how it stands out. In fact, I've received a lot of warm words on it, including the ex-CEO of Coca-Cola, who said that he endorsed the book and said that he recommends it for anybody who wants to be a better leader.
Wow, I mean, that's definitely a big endorsement. And I mean, the book, it's received a lot of endorsements on Amazon. I mean, you've got over 100 reviews for it. So that's definitely kudos to you. That is a big milestone to hit and getting all this good engagement for the book. And I know that in the book, there are 6 key leadership traits that are the focus that all of these leaders seem to have. And one of those is persistence. And I feel like this is something very important because there are definitely going to be challenges along the journey. And we have to, persistence is going to help us get through that. So how do you recommend we develop our persistence? Is it just going through challenges, or are there things we could do now to develop it?
It's a character trait, so you're either persistent or you're not. But for sure, you can develop it. And there's a lot of mindset. It's a mindset that you can develop. So one way to look at any, setbacks is that you can't look at, something that doesn't go the way you want it as a failure. Yeah, you can't for sure label yourself as a failure. Instead, think about it as a learning experience. So, if you succeed the very first time, at whatever you want to succeed, great, you succeeded. But if you didn't, great, you learned something. So the next time you try to do it, you'll already be a few steps ahead. So I think that's really important. If people, it's amazing when you look at, my subject of interest is books and publishing. And when you, for example, look at some books that are extremely popular and they've received tons and tons of rejections, the authors had to be extremely persistent to keep on. And yes, for when you doubt your self-esteem, when you feel like you don't necessarily want to go out and just stay in your room and cry, and it's okay. It's good to have feelings, but maybe jump back up again.
Alinka, thank you for sharing with us those great insights on how we can develop our persistence. And when we have these challenges in front of us and we're developing our persistence, it's always very helpful for us to have relationships where people who have faced similar challenges were able to go to them and get advice. Other people who we're able to interact with, learn a lot from, and they can give us more opportunities. And relationships are really important in business. And one of those 6 key leadership traits that people focus on. So how do you recommend that we build and also maintain healthy relationships?
A lot of the CEOs that I interviewed mentioned that relationships are really the backbone of their business and the reason of their success. So one thing that comes to mind, one of the interviews that I did that stood out was of a CEO who had acting classes in her student years, and she said that it was really important to listen. You really had to listen to remember the lines and to know what was going on. And she attributes those listening skills to being able to build relationships with people. And we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so it's really important that we listen a lot before we actually speak. And the same goes for dealing with customers. So I'm reading a lot of Zig Ziglar, and he says that you need to identify your prospect's needs. So you really need to sort of x-ray your prospect to see what they need before you start pitching them. So and that's how you build a relationship with a prospect or with an employee, with anybody really, by listening to them. Another funny story that comes to mind is somebody told me that they met somebody at an airport, I think, and this person was talking all the time. They never let my friend speak ever. So they were just talking. And at the end, they said to my friend, this was the best conversation I've had in years. So it's just so funny, People like to talk. So it's important for us to listen and really listen to what they say. That really allows us to develop a meaningful relationship.
I really love that idea of listening because most of the time, we want to think about different things that we want to say. We want to get it out there, but if you take the time to listen to someone and hear what they have to say, in some cases they can give you a new idea, but in a lot of cases it's building the relationship and building the trust, because people do love to talk about themselves. And if you give someone the privilege to do that, that's going to help build a healthy relationship, and you're going to better be able to give someone advice if you hear their side of the story. And knowing that side of the story is really important for when we want to attract customers. But one of the things that I see is that a lot of businesses are focused on getting customers, but they're not as customer-centered in the idea that they're continuing to serve their existing customers. They're just focused on getting the next customer instead of acknowledging their existing customers who can then become repeat customers. So what are your recommendations on how we can become more customer-centered?
That's a great point. And, attracting customers is actually one of the most, one of the biggest expenses any business has. And, even online marketers often are guilty of this, of just building a list of customers, but not really catering to those who've already become customers. And as you said, the best customers are repeat customers. So something that we could do and try to emulate is, and this was mentioned by many of the CEOs that I interviewed for Supreme Leadership. They all looked up to Amazon as being one of the most customer-centered companies in the world. And just to give you an example of how customer-centered they are, Jeff Bezos is well known for always leaving an empty chair during his board meetings, and that empty chair is for the customer. So any decision they make is they're really focused on the customer, and you can tell because I've discussed my experiences with Amazon with the CEOs that I interviewed, and they all said that whenever you have any problem, they are just so extremely customer-centered that there is no hassle at all. You can solve any issue that you have, and that really explains why they are such a tycoon in the business that they're doing.
I mean, it's like Amazon is one of the most successful companies on the entire planet, and it's like a lot of people do look up to that. And it's interesting that Jeff Bezos does keep that empty seat to basically symbolize the customers that use Amazon. So it's very important to focus on your audience. And I mean, I can only imagine all the great insights that you got from interviewing all these great leaders. And I'm wondering, based on these interviews and your own experience of publishing very successful books, what do you believe holds most people back from reaching their full potential?
I think we discussed it at the beginning, and I think there's the persistence factor is extremely important, together with adaptability, of course, which is also one of the characteristics that the CEOs I interviewed have. I mean, you really have to go after your goals. You're the only one. You're the one who's most excited about them. But sometimes you need to change course a little bit. And I have a great example from the book. I interviewed the photo boys, and they were in the photo business 25 years ago. They started when the Polaroid was very popular, so it was basically printing pictures, but they never said that they were in the printing business. They said from the very beginning that they were in the memory business. So when the printing technology was on the decline, they were able to throw away perfectly working printers and refocus on the digital technology. And it's because they knew what type of business they were in. They were in the memory business, not in the printing business. So, they had a goal, and that was to keep people's memories alive. But they were also able to adapt, when the technology changed. So I think that's really important. Sometimes when you when you're really focused on something and you're not able to change course slightly, you might be destined to, well, I don't want to call it failure, but to not achieving your goals in that particular area. So it's really important to go after your goals, even if you have to try 100 times, do it. But also, be aware of what's happening, because maybe if you change your goal slightly, you're going to reach it faster, and that might actually contribute to you reaching your main goal.
Alinka, I really love that idea of the adaptability and just being focused on your goal. And I feel like that lack of focus or having a lot of focus can really make the difference for a lot of people, whether they achieve the results they want or don't achieve the results that they want. And throughout our journeys towards new goals that we set ourselves, there are going to be certain challenges along the way. And with that in mind, Alinka, I'm wondering if you could share with us one big challenge you faced in your journey and a powerful lesson you learned during that challenge.
I think this is going to be a great practical example of what I just theoretically described. It's, of a goal that I had, something that I wanted to do, but that didn't work out, and then I changed my goal. So back in 2010, as you mentioned at the beginning of our chat, I worked in a multinational company, and I reached a moment when I had to leave the position I was in and just change the position within the company. And I want to do a certain thing. I'm a certified Six Sigma black belt. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's it was famous in GE some years back. It's basically a methodology of improving processes, reducing waste. So it's very valuable for multinational companies. And what I wanted to do, since I was a certified Six Sigma black belt, I wanted to teach others how to become what I was. So I wanted to become a master black belt. But the company that I was in didn't want me to do that, and I was going from interview to interview, and I wasn't motivated because the jobs that they were proposing, I didn't want them. All I wanted to do was that master black belt, and in the end that didn't happen. So when I had the opportunity, I took the golden parachute that they were offering and left. And what happened then? I had to reinvent myself. I wanted to reinvent myself, even though I was covered for a year and a half. And I decided to travel the world. That's how I met my husband. So it was, a really great decision in the end. But it came from sort of a failure because, in the end, I didn't get that position that I wanted. But when we're in 2018, so 8 years later, I couldn't imagine a more satisfying life than, the life that I have right now. Because, I have I can work from anywhere. Right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm on a cruise ship. I can publish books, help others achieve their dreams, publish books, market their books. No matter where I'm located, I can enjoy my two children. I see them every day. I'm not one of those people who go to work before their children wake up and come back home when their children are already asleep. So, in a way, it was a failure. But on the other hand, it gave me the space that I needed to become who I am. So, sometimes you will see that one of the biggest failures that you would think you're experiencing lead to your biggest success. And now that I said that, I realize that I've heard that before, in the interviews that I've done, like one of the CEOs said that from their darkest moments came their, best product. So that was also, a quote that stuck with me. So, try to look at the big picture.
I really love hearing that story because basically what happened was you had this really big idea of what you wanted to do. Like you were set in this path and the door seemed shut, but with that door shut, you were able to open another door. So sometimes when we face rejection, it could actually be a good thing because that rejection changes our path towards something better, especially when we use rejection as fuel to continue putting in the work and effort. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier is that you read and listen to Zig Ziglar. He is also someone I've been listening to and reading a lot lately. So Secrets of Closing the Sale, that's something I'm actually reading right now. But with Zig and books in mind, Alinka, I'm wondering if you could share with us 3 great books that you believe would have a positive impact on us.
Well, I'm very much for the oldies but goodies. One of the books that had a huge impact on me, and I read it when I was a teenager. Yeah, I know you were a teenager until recently, but I read it when I was a really young teenager. So I think I was probably 12 or 13.
Oh wow!
And that book literally fell off the shelf, in a bookstore, and it was Think and Grow Rich. So I saw that title and I thought, I can think, right? So I can grow rich. So I read that book, and he talks about these secrets. Napoleon Hill. He says that you're probably not going to get it immediately, and in fact, I didn't get it immediately. But it really made a huge impression on me, and from that moment, I was really focused on achieving my goals, and then setting other goals, achieving those, and just kept going. So that was huge. That book really made a huge impression. And I reread it recently, and I don't agree with everything. My mindset changed, but the foundation of the book, I think, is still and will always be very, meaningful and valuable for anybody who reads it and listens to it. And then other books are similar. The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, which I think you can Google and get a free copy online. And so those mindset type of books, I think that a lot comes to mindset. Right? Mindset is huge. I think it's a famous quote by Ford. If you think you can't, you can't. If you think you can, you can. I think that's really, really important. And then, now we talked about Zig Ziglar. He gives you some really practical tips. So very straightforward, things to do to close the sale, especially if you're dealing with, if you're dealing one-on-one with prospects. So if you're selling something on the phone, that's really important. You can read through that book, The Secrets of Closing the Sale. There's 200 closes. So I'm sure you can find one or two that you can adapt, and you can adapt to your business. I've recently discovered that, and I'm not going to drop any names, but one of the like a really big name in the webinar business. He said, I just listened to a podcast, and he said that the foundation of how he created this webinar that really works was Zig Ziglar's work. He just, he took those frameworks, applied it to the online world, and filled in the blanks. So, I really think that those oldies but goodies, take them, read them, and adapt. Here we go again with adaptability. Adapt them to your particular circumstances.
Alinka, thank you for those 3 great book recommendations. Those links will be over at the show notes, which are at markberty.com/E139. And before we go, I'd like to flip the tables a little bit. So, Alinka, I've asked you several questions throughout our time together, but what do you believe is one question that we need to be asking ourselves more often?
I really believe in continuous improvement, and that comes from my experience with Six Sigma. So I think that, every day you wake up, you can ask yourself, what can I do today? Something small. What can I do today to make myself a better person, or my business a better business, even if it's just by 1%? When you do 1% improvement every day, you'll see that in the scale of a year, and I did that calculation once, but I don't remember now. Within, in the scale of a year, you have had an amazing improvement if you just do 1% every day.
Alinka, thank you for giving us that great question. Definitely food for thought, and for sharing all of your great insights throughout our time together in Breakthrough Success. Listeners, we've been talking about Supreme Leadership, Alinka's latest book. You can grab that over Amazon. She also has a lot of books and other things that she's working on. So, Alinka, why don't you share some of that with us?
Well, I'm mostly known for my work with authors. So I help people write and market books. So if we have any listeners who are interested in getting a book out, I would recommend grabbing free copy of my award-winning guide, How I Sold 80,000 Books. And you can get that at authorwisdom.com.
Alinka, thank you for sharing us that great resource. All of that will be linked in the show notes. I can't thank you enough for being on the Breakthrough Success podcast and my virtual summits as well. Thank you for sharing your great insights with us today.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. It's so exciting to talk to you and to provide value to your audience. Thank you.
How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn more and get access to this free resource, visit markberty.com/